My philosophy is you might just well enjoy yourself. Among Christian soldiers is the biggest religious lie ever written. Because Christ was bad enough because Christianity equates democracy, and democracy equates capitalism, and capitalism equates free trade and war. I think I'll turn Buddhist. He's a handsome. There's one thing I find boring.
What's that?
In me and others. I can't stand sobriety.
I feel the same, John.
Didn't even have a drink after you. Oh, come on.
All right.
Now I enjoy my woodchucks.
It was in 1994 that I first went to Melbourne to start filming the reclusive and wild master painter, John Perceval. He was renowned for defending his privacy, and he may have allowed me access because of former family connections. I met John in the early 1980s, some 10 years before the start of this film. At the time, I was involved with his youngest daughter, Alice. She would visit him in a hospital for the mentally ill, as he sat out a decade of his life, known as his silent years, a period where he didn't paint. Alice and I had our baby in 1983. He was born at home, and we named him Marlo. After a couple of years, we separated. Marlo went with his mother.
Nice to hear that you're sort of related to me.
Yes, in a
abstract way. Yeah.
Through Marlo, who I haven't seen for about...
I think I've got a photograph of him.
Have you? Yeah, I've got a few recent ones.
On the first of my many visits, I found John sitting it out in a hostel for senior citizens. His work around the four walls seemed to keep him company.
Starting with your life, you started off in Western Australia. In wheat country, was it?
Yeah. One foot in the wheat field and 1 foot in the virgin forest.
John's mother, Dorothy Dalton, married his father when she was very young. Dorothy was known to be warm, talkative and outgoing, with an interest in the arts. His father, Bob South, on the other hand, was said to be very reserved, almost silent. John has since drawn and painted his father's farm in many styles. His mother, Dorothy, ran off when John was 18 months old, and his sister, Betty, 3. They say the train that carried their mother away appears symbolically in many of John's paintings.
Can you tell me a bit about those experiences in those early days? Was it lonely?
Well, the funny thing, one minute you think you're terrible, next you think you're marvellous. The little school we went to was rather nice. That's about 10 children. And yeah, but we used to go play with the Aboriginals sometimes, my sister and I, which is very nice, because they knew all about the bush. And I have a sort of, I'd like to see the place before I pass into the next world, if there is one.
Eventually, Dorothy remarried and took her new husband's name to Berg Perceval. John and his sister Betty joined them later and they moved to Melbourne. When he was at boarding school, he used to go to the beach for summer holidays. It was on one of these occasions that he caught poliomyelitis from another boy. The disease was in epidemic proportions around the mid-1930s. John spent a year in hospital, fighting the possibility of paralysis throughout his body. He was left, finally, with permanent damage to his right leg.
Where did you start to feel that the painting, that you were suited to painting, or painting was suited to you?
Well, I really only took it seriously after I got polio, but I did a lot of work before.
Why do you think you took it seriously after polio?
Well, because it gave me a chance to knock off school. I didn't like being at school much.
As a teenager, he made masterful copies of well-known works of the European painters. He loves those paintings, and they're with him to this day. He likes to revisit locations he's painted. We sit and gaze at those scenes and drink beer. I was lucky enough to film John at work. This was made possible by John's manager, Ken McGregor. Ken has moved John from the hostel back to this studio apartment. John now lives alone here. Over his life, John has resisted intrusions and changes to his routine. Ken has been a filter, if not a necessary interface with the outside world.
Known John for about, I'd say, 14 years, and I've helped him out consistently for probably about 12 of those 14 years. I've seen him improve. I've seen him go from somebody who needs constant care to somebody who's virtually self-sufficient.
Oh, dear, Ken.
Although he lives like a recluse and he shuns publicity, I mean, he hates doing interviews. He hates journalists coming and asking him questions about his personal life. So what I've been able to do over the years is to give him a little bit more confidence to talk to people, but it still hasn't made any difference when it comes to talking to a journalist.
See, I don't think there's any work of art worth much that hasn't got a layer of poetry. That means that a picture can have meaning as well, but you can take the meaning away and you can still have the poetry or the music.
Do you feel there's always a sort of urgency to do more paintings?
No, I don't feel any urgency, but I feel there's a lot that hasn't been done. Congratulations. Here, can you get me the oranges for me?
Orange? No, I will get those though. I've got some peaches.
Oh, good white ones?
As white as I can get, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Ken is married and runs a house painting business, while also managing the domestic and business sides of John's life. I often wondered where John would be without Ken's disciplined commitment.
Yeah, you've had breakfast?
Finish that now.
Do you want anything else?
We'll do.
You sure? All right. I'll top your medication up. Have you had your tests back from your blood test?
Look, come to those.
Yeah.
I see Pearson there's none. I'll throw another colour here.
Have you?
You got one up there, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I'll get it for you. You finished that one?
I don't know, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's working.
I can't get it. I can...
When you push it down, just go, take a really deep breath when you push
Yeah.
it
Mm,
down.
that's not bad.
That better? Good. That'll help your asthma a bit anyway.
Yeah.
He's an extraordinary person. I mean, he's not the frail person that everybody sees when we go to exhibitions. I mean, he's very tough. In fact, he's bloody extraordinary. I mean, John used to smoke 3 or 4 packets of Camel cigarettes a day. And I used to come over at night and my hair would stink of cigarette and the clothes would stink. I said to John one day, I said, look, it drives me bloody mad you're smoking all the time. And John said, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to give up smoking? I said, yeah, that'd be great, John. Well, he took the Camel cigarette out of his mouth, he butted it out, and he hasn't smoked since.
There.
Yes.
I mean, if he liked something, there was a time there where he was eating about 64 eggs a week. All of a sudden, he's decided to like eggs. So he'd have an 8-egg omelette in the morning and one at night. And yeah, this went on for weeks and weeks. And then he changed to, say, cans of salmon, where he had like 5 cans of salmon a day. So he just gets onto something and he sort of abuses it, really.
Maybe that's his secret for longevity.
Well, it must be, because the doctors told his family 50 years ago that he only had several years to live. I mean, he was drinking very heavily. Do you need any more from Terry Street?
Oh, I'll get
Just one?
One flat.
Just one, all right. Well, I'll get that while I'm out as well. And I'll see if...
And another little contract.
All right.
I like something else to change. What else can
Well, I'll see what else is up there.
what else can you get?
You
I've got that on flat now.
can get milk?
No, what I'm saying is...
I'm only kidding.
No,
Something I know. I'll ask up there. I'll see what they've got. They might be able to have suggestions.
That suits you, stuff, because you don't consume all that muck.
Oh, okay. See that there? That was the size of the of this piece in here.
That was last year.
No, this is one that I got up the bush. That was actually full of seeds, and then the actual leaves were.
It might be a soil deficiency here.
I don't know, because these don't seem to have seeds in these at all. It's a soil deficiency.
Oh, they might be hybrid then.
Yeah, I think they are. So what we want, we'll grow the big ones because John wants to do some paintings on them. So we took the seeds out here and planted them, but they haven't come up to the large sunflowers. And so we'll have to find out. Let's go to a nursery and find out why they won't do that. So.
The asbestos file, if you like, is about this thick, and all of those reports and assessments are. So
John loves watching television. He also enjoys having Ken's two daughters around.
the register is open.
Over here, there's some birds. There's a big over. There's some little chocky biscuits. Down here, there's some birds. There's a it has big fatty legs. And there's another ship over
It's been around 14 years since John has seen some of his own family.
there.
He and I shared this predicament in that I hadn't seen Marlo for the same period.
And there's a scarecrow. And doing a nice gold frame. That's all for today.
You're sorry, isn't it?
What's that?
You're sorry.
No, I haven't seen that before.
And that's what I've seen. That's good.
Oh, that's Ken whipping you. Yes, it is. That's the one. He told me about that.
As the Cossack eating the Christ out of an angel.
The Cossack beating the Christ out of who?
An angel.
Angel.
I didn't talk about family with John. For me, the subject was too difficult. When Marlo was 18 months old, family circumstances led to his mother returning to Wales, where her mother and sisters lived. Her letters were very loving and encouraging for me to join them in Wales, so I gave up my job and lifestyle and planned to continue earning for us by teaching somewhere in the UK. But on arrival, I was saddened by the realization that the relationship had disintegrated.
Some of your works have been about social conditions that are fairly traumatic for those in the picture.
Which one did you talk about?
Oh, well, start with boy with a cat. Or in a way, some of the scenes in, say, on the street in Fitzroy.
There is a social condition in all my religious paintings too, I suppose.
Yes.
If you take Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
let's talk about social condition. It's also talking about Melbourne. It's also talking about the night. The main thing is, it's just beautiful. See, some fool recently said, beauty is better than brains. which is quite right. How's it going? Go on.
Want to go on? Yeah, okay.
Around 1948, he embarked on a small but wonderful series of religious works. They were drawn from the Bible and were an homage to the early European painters, Bruegel in particular.
Are you up to it now?
Up to what?
Having a quick talk about John?
Yes. What could be more appropriate than a glass of wine?
At an exhibition in Sydney, I managed to talk about John with his former brother-in-law, the painter David Boyd.
I met John in 1940, early in 42 or late 41, when Guy, my brother Guy, brought him back from the cartographic company where Guy had enlisted in the military, and it was the cartographic company, and John was in the army then, and when he brought him home to Murrumbina for the first time, everybody was entranced because he was a vital person, and when I walked him and his girlfriend back to the station after they'd been there, and John dismissed his girlfriend and said, I'm sorry, her name happened to be Mary, by the way. He said he'd fallen in love with Mary Boyd, who was a young slip of a girl. He said, I'm getting myself discharged from the army and I'm going to live with the Boyds at Murrumbina. And I said, how nice. But I think what had happened really, we hadn't had much of a childhood family life. This was the thing. He was, in some respects, very much a lost person. But he had that incredible vitality, of course, which, and personality and a kind of, I suppose you call it charisma, which, of course, impressed pretty well anybody he met. So when he came to Murrumbina and found already a ready-made family, with everything there, he didn't beat down the bush or waste any time. He just said, he just informed us. No, may I? Just informed us that he was coming to live there, and of course have offspring or begat with our sister Mary.
Instant family.
And well, not exactly instant. It was spread over a little while.
John and Mary went on to have 4 children, Matthew, Tess, Celia and Alice. In the 1950s, he stopped painting for a time when he opened a pottery with Arthur Boyd. As usual, John threw himself at the process, making original and defiant pieces that were at their best with his ceramic angels. In 1963, the Percevals moved to London. This exodus was part of a general disillusionment that artists, writers and intellectuals had with the country at the time. Mary's brothers, David and Arthur, also settled in London. Despite his supposed liberation from a bleak, isolated and conservative Melbourne, John never really liked London. On an occasion after John went to hospital, Ken bought a video camera. He felt there was an urgency to start a record of painting moments when they occurred.
Because you'll be able to see John actually working on the working the paint into the canvas rather than Okay. This is what we basically do. We set the canvas up for him, mix the paints to make it a bit easier for him. Closer to you? John's only been out of hospital for about 2 weeks, I'd say, after having an operation for a blood clot. He couldn't get out of hospital quick enough. About a day after he had the operation, he wanted to get out straight away and start working again. He usually tries to do a drawing each day if he can. And from these drawings, he'll use them for studies for paintings, or he'll base the drawings and do some pastels or some watercolours.
Knock off them, I have a screw.
Portraits are hard to do. Not everyone that sits for a portrait likes the portrait or the end result. But I find John's portraits quite fascinating because he puts his warped sense of humour into the portrait.
So my was telling us one about 3 o'clock in the morning about anthropology, you know. And then well, on the visual arts.
A film on the visual arts?
I don't know what it was about, but it more to prove that all arts are absolutely mad.
David Lowell has come over to John's to paint his portrait. An established painter, David admires John. Both have railed against a certain kind of art that gets a hold in galleries, colleges and universities.
We film on tonight, 8:30, SBS, about Houston.
Mr. Hewson?
Houston, man who did the Opera House.
Oh, yeah.
Should be good.
I've got to spend $200 on my aerial to get SBS down where I am.
Oh, we'll spend it because...
Yeah, it's the only station, really.
Channel 2 is good too.
Yeah, 2's got a few good things.
The third film last night of Dennis Potter.
Who's he?
Birdman just he did the singing detective.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
I admire how John retains his rebelliousness. His work and personality convey a stand against trendy and superficial affectations. I respect his unrelenting and true stand on such matters.
There's a terrible cult going on at the moment, David.
Yeah.
Where artists and writers, poets and the whole lot, all they can do is talk about their inner complications. It's so boring.
As if they're the only people who have them.
In the age today, there's a young writer from Queensland. All he writes about is the fact that he has a small cock and isn't any good at sex. And this is his whole makeup. What a bore. Can imagine Van Gogh doing that sort of stuff. Yeah, I gave Nettle Raymond.
That's right. You sent Neville round a drawing of a big cock, didn't you? I don't know how he took that actually.
Oh, he didn't, you know.
Did he see the funny side to it? Did he? Or
Oh,
he didn't think he was a big prick or anything like that.
you had a condom then.
Oh, that's right. I did too. Yeah.
The Percevals spent 2 years in London, and in 1965 they came back to Australia. Shortly afterwards, Mary, fed up with John's drinking, returned to London, taking Alice with her. Ten years later, he committed himself to the psychiatric hospital, Larundel.
The Rundle was a decade in my life, which I don't want to turn into 2 decades.
Bit big, Ken.
This sucks up. Keep this for reference in case people say that I don't do anything. What do you reckon?
This was done 2 weeks ago.
Yep, 2 weeks ago. It's a pigsty already. In fact, the word John Perceval and hygiene shouldn't be put in the same sentence. Really. It's not pleasant. As you can see.
I like your pink gloves, Ken.
Yeah, it should be on someone else's hands, but the trouble is it only lasts like this for a day and then it's a pigsty again. The thing is, I can't come to the studio and have the place in a mess like this. I don't like bringing art dealers here and photographers and people from the galleries because you know, not everyone lives like this. It's not a pleasant sort of thing for people to see. But John doesn't give a bugger.
That's one of his good points, not really caring about things.
No, John doesn't do anything. That's why he's lived so long. He's said that to quite a few people. He says, well, why should I worry about it? And shorten my life. I don't know what you do it again. You reckon he's going to outlive us all anyway, so maybe that's what'll happen.
Although we didn't talk much about it, I thought a lot about our family. Deciding to do something about it, we made contact with Alice and made plans to go to Wales.
Might need those. It might be cold in some places.
Salt. Very good salt.
Yep, okay. Quite a few of them in. I'll put all the multicoloured ones in for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. And then,
The last time he'd seen his daughter, Alice, was some 15 years ago. And of course, this trip also meant that I would get to see Marlo.
go on the side panel. John's epileptic.
John alluded to his desire to resolve things with his former wife, Mary.
So how do you feel about going away? How do you feel about going away?
As long as I'm not completely sober. Yeah.
You want to have a few drinks, do you? You can't have too many on before you get on the plane, otherwise they won't let us on.
Would you handcuff me to the seat and give me a shot?
Handcuff you to the seat and what?
Give me a shot.
Bit severe, John.
There were 4 of us travelling: John, Ken, myself and Robin, a university student who had won John's trust and friendship.
They got stairs on the playground.
No, we're right.
That kind of upstairs.
No, you won't.
don't have to go upstairs.
Your wheelchair, Johnny, you must go straight. Straight.
London, the usual dreary and drizzly place, did little to dampen our sense of expectation of seeing family. And so we set off on the 2-day drive to Alice's place.
Cheers, Jack.
The name Perceval came from England, didn't it?
I came originally from William the Conqueror.
Right.
Bishop de Burgh came over with William the Conqueror.
Right. Do you know?
Back to the whole of England. and Protestants.
Do you know anything else about the family background?
Unfortunately, I know nothing about our real family.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Except that my grandfather was chief of Aboriginal overseer in Calgary.
Oh, right.
According to my grandmother, he was an Aboriginal.
What about your father?
Oh no, he never touched it.
Didn't he? He just worked the wheat field, didn't he?
How's that, Ken?
Really fucking good, Dave. That's not. This is a homemade pie, anyway.
Homemade pie.
This was cheap.
Well, we'll see if we can dine with Queen Elizabeth in the palace before we go home, mate. What do you reckon?
I'll bet.
Get an invitation from her?
Oh, we'll see.
She gave you that medal.
Have connections in the right place.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
After Mary's return to England some 30 years ago, she married a colleague of John's, Sydney Nolan. They settled in Wales together. Sir Sydney has since passed away, but she's still there. John still didn't know if Mary would meet him. but Alice was prepared to see us. Very soon I'd be seeing Marlowe. I often wondered what life would have been like with him. For ethical reasons, and after her request, we have removed the film segments of Alice and our visit to her place. While we were there, Marlowe played us a clarinet piece that goes something like this. We didn't stay long in the hotel in the little village nearby. I became extremely miserable and must have affected everyone. I was suffering from déjà vu.
I've got some money. That'll be heaps. 20 of you.
We were shown the way to Ludlow village nearby. Sir Sidney Nolan loved the castle ruin there. Mischievously, John built into his drawing at Ludlow a world-famous Sid Nolan icon, the masked Ned Kelly. Here, the armoured Australian bushranger flies a flag of communism in celebration of his heroic overthrow of Ludlow Castle.
Oh, I wish we had brought the pestles, because it would have looked good with a bit of pestle.
John had hoped for a more complete reunion with his family, but what I filmed is basically what we got. I was disappointed because I'd hoped to spend a week away somewhere with Marlowe. That did not eventuate. His mother saying that he was not prepared for an overnight stay away from her. Any hopes of John seeing his former wife had faded. For those involved, that level of reunion must have been too difficult, too painful. I don't know if the journey resolved anything for John, but I hope one day Marlowe will join us. I trust he has inherited some of those qualities of John's that I've come to recognise and love. Resilience, integrity, and always observant, always sharp.
Have you got any more beers in the front there, John?
No.
Did you know Sweeney Reid, John?
Yeah?
What's he like?
Very funny man.
The women liked him, so I hear.
Oh, yeah.
What about Joy Hester?
Oh, she's nice. That woman in my French nun.
Oh, that's Joy Hester.
The naked woman.
My doctor, Ray Pearson, came to see me yesterday. I said, I woke up this morning feeling awful, very crook. He said, I can't help that. Then he said, when I die, I'll be as famous as Van Gogh. That's extraordinary. Do you think it's true?